Hello, Eternal Life fans. It's Rowan from the Eternal Life Fan Club. And today we're going to be exploring this question. Is everything you do being recorded? And what are the implications if this is true? If everything we are doing is being recorded, what does that mean for us? Recently there is a movie called Christopher Robin. And the slogan of this movie is, "Sooner or later, your past catches up to you." So if everything we're doing is being recorded, then that would be true, wouldn't it? It's like, if everything you're doing is being recorded, how is that information going to be used? It could be used against you, right? But, so, how might this be true? How might everything you do being recorded? That sounds like a, sci-fi movie or something. Well, one possibility is God. That's the traditional view of God, is that if there's a God, God could certainly have the power to record everything we do. Right? That's the typical religious story. And then there's the other possibility of the simulated reality. Okay? People like Elon Musk have recently come out and saying there's like one in a billion chance that we're not in a simulation. So this simulated reality hypothesis is picking up momentum. A lot of people are believing this now. It's very similar to The Matrix. Okay, The Matrix is based on the same story, the same principle, that maybe this is not the base reality and there's another reality and this is all just a simulation. And then there's remember the movie in The Matrix, there's the architect, the guy who created The Matrix, right? And he's kind of like God, I guess you could say. Whoever created The Matrix, that person would essentially be taking the role of God. And what's really interesting to me is that a lot of people who preach the simulated reality, they say it's very likely to be true. A lot of these people also think God is a silly idea. Okay, but don't they understand how similar these things are? The idea of a God is very similar to the idea of a simulated reality, because if we're in a simulated reality, then essentially there has to be a person or a thing or a group of people or whatever that created the simulation, and those people or that whatever created the simulation, the architect, that would essentially be God. So it's a very similar concept. All right, so if you're open to the possibility of a simulated reality, then you're really not far off from the concept of a God. It's very related, okay? Because if there's a simulated reality, who's the simulator? It's an open-ended question. It's a big question mark. Who's the architect? What's the personality of the architect? Is the architect judgmental? Okay, could the architect be like Willy Wonka, this very judgmental person that's watching us and testing us and judging us based upon the information that they've recorded in the simulation? Basically, it's this idea that everything you do might be watched, recorded, used against you, and maybe you're going to be judged by everything you do. But ultimately, it's hypothetical, right? The architect, if there's a God of the Matrix, the simulation that we might be living in, nobody would know the rules. So if you wanted to be prepared, you would kind of guess the rules and try to guess maybe what the rules would be and try to obey them. That's what I do. I try to, because you can't really know the rules, because some things are just not in the realm of knowledge that we can know for sure, and that would be, the personality of the architect, the God, the rules, things like that. You just have to kind of guess. I don't see any other way of doing it. You might factor in things like, okay, your conscience. You might think, well, maybe that was programmed by the God, the architect of the simulation. So you might think, okay, maybe we have some kind of guidance system, some morality that's been programmed into us, so we better follow that. That's sort of a basic assumption you could make. So what are these? And then the other option of being recorded is just the basic idea of the Orwellian state, the government. Okay, the government might be spying on us and watching us. This is you see this in a lot of movies. It's pretty realistic in the world. You see Facebook spying on people, and who's to say what the government is, how much control and power the government has to actually just watch a lot more than we think. Okay, the government might be spying a lot more than we think. But ultimately, that could never compare to the type of surveillance that would be in a simulated reality or a god. Because if there's a simulated reality or a god, basically everything is being watched all the time, whereas the government can't really compete with that type of power at this point. Maybe eventually, if the government, would rise in power and get more and more technology, they'd have more and more ability to spy on us. But what are some of the implications of all of this? Okay, the idea that we might be watched, that everything we're doing is being recorded. Basically, there are two main implications of this. Some people, if they believed in the simulation, or if they believed in God, they might be less afraid of death, because they would be thinking, well, hey, if this is all a simulation, then we get a second life. We die, but we wake up in the real world. And this is one of the implications that this might be a comforting thought to people, that this is not the base reality, that you wake up and you get another life or something, or in the context of religion, they'd be thinking there's a heaven or an afterlife. This is where these ideas can get a little bit dangerous. So if you're considering the idea of a simulated reality or a god, don't lose your fear of death, is what I'm saying. Okay? Don't lose your fear of death. You have to treat this life as though it's the only life, and you don't think you're going to get another life, okay? Because all of this is just a theory, it's a hypothesis. It's very likely that this is just the only life, and that we're not in a simulation, okay? Or there's not a God. So you have to consider that as well. So treat this life like we have to live forever physically here, and you don't get any second chances, okay? Then there's also the obvious implication of a hypothetical judgment that might be taking place, that this life could literally be a test of some sort. So you're having to guess what the rules might be and obey the rules, because you wouldn't want to end up like in the end of the movie Willy Wonka. Willy Wonka, he was judging all the children, and Charlie. There was a moment there you were worried that Charlie was even going to fail the test, okay? Because Charlie's grandpa said, "Hey, when does Charlie get his chocolate?" And Wonka said, "He doesn't get the chocolate." And the grandpa said, "Why not? Why not?" And Willy Wonka said, "Because he broke the rules." So there was a moment there we were wondering if Charlie was going to fail the test, but he ended up passing the test. So if this life is a test, we better pass it. We better live in such a way where we would, basically assume that everything we're doing is being watched and potentially judged, okay? Then there's the other implications of this, which is, I'm reminded of the movie The Circle. It was a movie with Emma Watson and Tom Hanks, and this movie was about a futuristic company similar to Google, and this company was like watching everybody with their cameras, and they had cameras everywhere, and it was this idea that people would behave better if they thought they were being watched, okay? And it's a true idea, okay? If you think you're being watched, you're gonna behave better than if you think you're not being watched, right? People who think they're not being watched, it's kind of human nature for people to try to get away with things or do whatever they want. If they think they're in the privacy of their home, if they think they're, in private, they don't think they're being watched, They might be more tempted to do bad things. But if you're thinking you're being watched, that has serious implications, and you might actually behave better. So it's a good idea to consider all of this and to think it actually might be true. You might be being watched. And actually, to have people think this way, it actually creates a safer society. Because then, if people think they're being watched, or if they're really considering this all as a real possibility, they might behave much better, and they'd be more moral people. And it would be a safer society for people to think this way, to think that life could be a test. Okay, so there's that as well. But basically, that's the gist of it. The ultimate message here is better safe than sorry. So whether you think this is true or not, whether you think there's a God or not, or whether you're considering the possibility that this is a simulation, what I would recommend is it's not really about what you believe, it's about what's possible. And these things are possibly true. So if you're trying to live forever, if living forever is your goal, and that's our goal here, it's the Eternal Life Fan Club, okay, then you'd be better safe than sorry. And regardless of what you thought about this stuff, you would act as though it were true. You would live your life as though everything you're doing is being watched. And it's that quote, it's the slogan from the Christopher Robin movie, okay? That everything you're doing, okay, all your actions might come back to bite you. So don't think you can get away with anything. I guess that's the conclusion of this video, is don't think you can get away with anything immoral, okay? And yes, the rules are a guess. If there's a God, we don't know the rules. We don't know exactly how he would be judged. The architect, if this is a simulation, we don't know how the architect would be judging us and what the criteria would be. But we have to consider that if there is an architect, or if there's a God, the God gets to decide who lives forever and who doesn't get to live forever. Okay? So there could be a test, and you have to factor that in. If you're being prepared, if you're being smart, you would factor this into your eternal life strategy. I think so. If this is a simulation, if there's an architect, maybe the architect can give you benefits if you're doing things that are really, really good. If the architect likes what you're doing, if the architect thinks you're a good person, the architect could help you live forever. So the architect could give you advantages. If this is all video game, consider that it's like a video game. At any point, the architect can just kind of shut you down, shut your system down, so you're dead, making you cease to exist. Maybe they could, replace you with a bot. If they don't like you, they might just go, okay, this person doesn't even deserve a consciousness. We'll just replace them with some kind of robotic bot-like character, a non-player character like you see in a video game or something, right? So at any point, they could just turn you down and just shut you down and just kill you, okay? So you have to think about the type of power that an architect could have, an architect of a matrix, okay? And the advantages that an architect could bestow upon you if they really liked you and liked what you're doing. So I guess the overall message here is we're trying to gain favor with the architect. So you have to consider that just if this was a simulation, it doesn't mean that you wake up and you get another life. Literally, it could be that if you die in the simulation, your program is turned off. You just cease to exist. So just because this might be a simulation doesn't mean there's another life, another chance, okay? You have to treat this life like it's the only life that exists. You don't know there's another chance. So be afraid, be very afraid of death. Thank you, and may you live forever.